Good morning. Today we are tomorrow. I was about to say tomorrow. Today we are starting chapter 3, the exoteric theory of breath. In this chapter, we will give you briefly the theories of the Western scientific world regarding the functions of the respiratory organs and the part in the human economy played by the breath. In subsequent chapters, we will give the additional theories and ascertained facts of the Oriental school of thought and research. Okay, so restarting chapter 3 of the science of breath, the exoteric theory of breath. In this chapter, we will give you briefly the theories of Western scientific world. We will give you briefly the theories of the Western scientific world regarding the functions of the respiratory organs and the part in the human economy played by the breath. In subsequent chapters, we will give the additional theories and ascertained facts of the Oriental school of thought and research. The Oriental accepts the theories and facts of his Western brothers, which have been known to him for centuries, and adds thereto much that the latter do not now accept, but which they will in due time discover, and which, after renaming, they will present to the world as a great truth. Before taking up the Western idea, it will perhaps be better to give a hasty general idea of the organs of respiration. The organs of respiration consist of the lungs and the air passages leading to them. The lungs are 2 in number and occupy the pleural chamber of the thorax, 1 on each side of the median line, being separated from each other by the heart, the greater blood vessels, and the larger air tubes. Each lung is free in all directions, except at the root, which consists chiefly of the bronchi, arteries, and veins connecting the lungs with the trachea and heart. The lungs are spongy and porous, and their tissues are very elastic. They are covered with a delicately constructed but strong sac known as the pleural sac, one wall of which closely adheres to the lung and the other to the inner wall of the chest, and which secretes a fluid which allows the inner surfaces of the walls to glide easily upon each other in the act of breathing. The air passages consist of the interior of the nose, pharynx, larynx, windpipe or trachea, and the bronchial tubes. When we breathe, we draw in the air through the nose, in which it is warmed by contact with the mucous membrane, which is richly supplied with blood. And after it has passed through the pharynx and larynx, it passes into the trachea or windpipe, which subdivides into numerous tubes called the bronchial tubes, bronchia, which in turn subdivide into and terminate in minute subdivisions in all the small air spaces in the lungs, of which the lungs contain millions. A writer has stated that if the air cells of the lungs were spread out over an unbroken surface, they would cover an area of 14,000 square feet. The air is drawn into the lungs by the action of the diaphragm, a great, strong, flat, sheet-like muscle stretched across the chest, separating the chest box from the abdomen. The diaphragm's action is almost as automatic as that of the heart, although it may be transformed into a semi-voluntary muscle by an effort of the will. When it expands, it increases the size of the chest and lungs, and the air rushes into the vacuum thus created. When it relaxes, the chest and lungs contract and the air is expelled from the lungs. Now, before considering what happens to the air in the lungs, let us look a little into the matter of the circulation of the blood. The blood, as you know, is driven by the heart through the arteries into the capillaries, thus reaching every part of the body, which it vitalizes, nourishes, and strengthens. It then returns by means of the capillaries by another route, the veins, to the heart, from whence it is drawn to the lungs. The blood starts on its arterial journey, bright red and rich, laden with life-giving qualities and properties. It returns by the venous route, poor, blue, and dull, being laden down with the waste matter of the system. It goes out like a fresh stream from the mountains. It returns as a stream of sewer water. This foul stream goes to the right auricle of the heart. When this auricle becomes filled, it contracts and forces the stream of blood through an opening in the right ventricle of the heart, which in turn sends it on to the lungs, where it is distributed by millions of air-like blood vessels to the air cells of the lungs, of which we have spoken. Now, let us take up the story of the lungs at this point. The foul stream of blood is now distributed among the millions of tiny air cells in the lungs. A breath of air is inhaled, and the oxygen of the air comes in contact with the impure blood through the thin walls of the hair-like blood vessels of the lungs, which walls are thick enough to hold the blood, but thin enough to admit oxygen to penetrate them. When the oxygen comes in contact with the blood, a form of combustion takes place, and the blood takes up oxygen and releases carbonic acid gas generated from the waste products and poisonous matter, which has been gathered up by the blood from all parts of the system. The blood, thus purified and oxygenated, is carried back to the heart again, rich, red, and bright, and laden with life-giving properties and qualities. Upon reaching the left auricle of the heart, it is forced into the left ventricle, from whence it is again forced out through the arteries on its mission of life to all parts of the system. It is estimated that in a single day of 24 hours, 35,000 pints of blood traverse the capillaries of the lungs, the blood corpuscles passing in single file and being exposed to the oxygen of the air on both of their surfaces. When one considers the minute details of the process alluded to, he is lost in wonder and admiration at nature's infinite care and intelligence. It will be seen that unless fresh air in sufficient quantities reaches the lungs, the foul stream of venous blood cannot be purified, and consequently, not only is the body thus robbed of nourishment, but the waste products, which should have been destroyed, are returned to the circulation and poison the system, and death ensues. Impure air acts in the same way, only in a lessened degree. It will also be seen that if one does not breathe in a sufficient quantity of air, the work of the blood cannot go on properly, and the result is that the body is insufficiently nourished and disease ensues, or a state of an imperfect health is experienced. The blood of one who breathes improperly is, of course, of a bluish dark color, lacking the rich redness of pure arterial blood. This often shows itself in a poor complexion. Proper breathing and a consequent good circulation results in a clear, bright complexion. A little reflection will show the vital importance of correct breathing. If the blood is not fully purified by the regenerative process of the lungs, it returns to the arteries in an abnormal state, insufficiently purified and imperfectly cleansed of the impurities which it took up on its return journey. The impurities, if returned to the system, will certainly manifest in some form of disease, either in a form of blood disease or some disease resulting from impaired functioning of some insufficiently nourished organ or tissue. The blood when properly exposed to the air in the lungs, not only has its impurities consumed and parts with its noxious carbonic acid gas, but it also takes up and absorbs a certain quantity of oxygen, which it carries to all parts of the body, where it is needed in order that nature may perform her processes properly. When the oxygen comes in contact with the blood, it unites with the hemoglobin of the blood and is carried to every cell, tissue, muscle, and organ, which it invigorates and strengthens, replacing the worn out cells and tissue by new materials, which nature converts to her use. Arterial blood, properly exposed to the air, contains about 25% of free oxygen. Not only is every part vitalized by the oxygen, but the act of digestion depends materially upon a certain amount of oxygenation of the food. And this can be accomplished only by the oxygen in the blood coming in contact with the food and producing a certain form of combustion. It is therefore necessary that a proper supply of oxygen be taken through the lungs. This accounts for the fact that weak lungs and poor digestion are so often found together. To grasp the full significance of this statement, one must remember that the entire body receives nourishment from the food assimilated, and that the imperfect assimilation always means an imperfectly nourished body. Even the lungs themselves depend on the same source of nourishment, and if, though imperfect, breathing the assimilation becomes imperfect, and if through imperfect breathing, the assimilation becomes imperfect, and the lungs in turn become weakened, they are rendered still less able to perform their work properly. And so, in turn, the body becomes further weakened. Every particle of food and drink must be oxygenated before it can yield us the proper nourishment, and before the waste products of the system can be reduced to the proper condition to be eliminated from the system. Lack of sufficient oxygen means imperfect nutrition, imperfect elimination, and imperfect health. Verily, breath is life. The combustion arising from the change in the waste products generates heat and equalizes the temperature of the body. Good breathers are not apt to take colds, and they generally have plenty of good warm blood, which enables them to resist the changes in the outer temperature. In addition to the above mentioned important processes, the act of breathing gives exercise to the internal organs and muscles, which feature is generally overlooked by the Western writers on the subject, but which the yogis fully appreciate. In imperfect or shallow breathing, only a portion of the lungs are brought into play, and a great portion of the lung capacity is lost. The system suffering in proportion to the amount of under-oxygenation. The lower animals, in their native state, breathe naturally, and primitive man undoubtedly did the same. The abnormal manner of living adopted by civilized man, the shadow that follows upon civilization, has robbed us of our natural habit of breathing, and the race has greatly suffered thereby. Man's only physical salvation is to get back to nature. I'll pause here. If anyone has any questions or thoughts or anything from that. I know Amanda has a background in like this kind of work just from being a yoga person, but also her studies and just being an EMT, but I know nothing about the body other than the few things I learned through yoga teacher training. I don't know where I was in high school. I don't remember anything from growing up, and in college I studied business. But I wish I did study this more, and I'm so grateful I'm learning it now because our bodies are so interesting.
Yeah, and you make them work better when you know how they work.
Yeah, I was reading this and I'm like, oh my God, breathe deeper while you're reading. I'm like, you need
Right.
oxygen.
Did you see what I posted on Instagram yesterday?
No.
So Deepak Chopra just completed this study about people who do meditation and pranayama for just 1 week. And it literally reprograms your DNA.
Oh my goodness.
It makes your telomeres longer, and it turns on the DNA. Like, it doesn't change your DNA. It just like changes what's turned on and what's turned off. So it turns on all the healing mechanisms in the body. I thought that was just so cool. Just after 1 week.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, like change your breath for 1 week and your whole nervous system feels different to live in your body. It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah. Just like even like I feel like I may not know how it works, but at least I know I breathe deep. Like I'm a deep breather, or I feel like I'm a good breather. I don't just breathe into like the upper part of my chest. Even just being aware on where you breathe in the body is important.
Yeah.
And not, I feel like probably not most people, it's like, oh, are you married? Do you have kids? What do you do for a living? Most people aren't like, oh, where in your body do you breathe? And like how many times have you ever gone to the doctor and them ask you? Whenever I go to the doctor for my physical, I don't go to the doctor only the once a year for my physical. I very rarely get sick, knock on wood. But she's always like, you know, I guess she's like checking your lungs. I don't know what she's doing, but she's like, take a deep breath. And my deep breath is my breath. And she's always laughing. She's like, I shouldn't have to tell you to take a deep breath. Because then I take an even deeper one and I'm there for like a minute. But how many doctors are like, oh, well, let's look into your breathing. Maybe this is what's causing.
Yeah, right.
And maybe it's not the only reason, but it's got to be contributing to all this illness out there. And suffering and anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I've been doing this since last March when COVID first happened. We've been meditating and breathing together every morning. And I can't even imagine where I would be right now. Like, I wish I had like a benchmark version of me to like be like, oh God, that's you now. So I
was thinking that yesterday.
I can understand what Deepak's saying.
Yeah, right.
I heard something, I don't know if this is true or not. It was a table conversation. It's not something I read about. I don't really care too much about it, but somebody was said, if you eat every time you eat a hot dog, it takes 35 minutes off your life. And we were joking because we remember like growing up and it was like, oh, every time you have a cigarette, it's going to take 7 minutes off of your life or something. And we're like, a hot dog is 35 minutes and a cigarette is seven minutes. But the point being is like, every time we consume these things that bring us like temporary pleasure, we're like taking away from ourselves. But meanwhile, all we have to do is just like a week of breathing and we're going to change our lives so dramatically.
Yeah.
But it's hard work. This is hard work. Not everyone can schedule time from themselves every day to do this. They don't prioritize this.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely believe in that study.
The Deepak one?
Yeah. Meditation is done so, and the breathing has done so much for me.
Yeah, he was saying it's like the fountain of youth. Like we're literally making ourselves younger by doing it. And I've seen studies on that too, that they look at the brains of meditators that are in their 60s and 70s, and they have the brains of 20-year-olds. Like their brains don't denigrate the way that they normally would. It's crazy because we're actively manipulating the matter that makes up our mind and body. It's pretty cool to be able to do that.
Well, and it's important too, because I'm going to be 39 this year in a few weeks, and I already feel my brain like, I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I should have been so much more patient with the older people. And I'm not even
Yeah.
old, but like when you're like a teenager and a 20 something and you're like talking to like an almost 40-year-old. And now I'm like, I am that almost 40-year-old. Be patient with my brain. It's deteriorating. I can't remember what I used to remember. But hopefully with this practice, it's clinging to a little bit more. All right, let's do some breath work, unless anyone has anything else to share. And then we'll
Nope.
go. I like this when we
Okay.
end a little bit early. That extra like 5 minutes yesterday like changed my day instead of going over. I had a super productive day yesterday.
Oh,
All right,
awesome.
so, yeah. All right, well, Domenica, good luck on day 2. And everyone else, have a beautiful day. We'll do
Yes,
some
have a great.
sit up nice and tall, create that strong straight spine we talked about yesterday. Whether you're sitting against the wall, or maybe you're even sitting on a chair or couch, just make sure the soles of the feet are on the ground, your legs aren't crossed. Maybe you're laying down. I'm propped up on a block, just beginning to take breath in through the nose and out through the nose. And again, just noticing where you are breathing. See if you can make it longer as you inhale, longer as you exhale. Relaxing the features on the face and the shoulders and the fingertips. You can stay right here with this nostril breath, or you can take your hand over to the face. These fingers will fold into the palm or on the third eye, space between the eyebrows. You'll close the right nostril with the thumb. Inhale through the left. Close left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close right. Exhale left. You can continue on a few more rounds, so you can let the palm come down. I'm going to do 3 to 5 rounds of bubble bee breath, brahmachari breath. So if you're new to this, you'll take the thumbs into the ears and you'll close off your hearing sense, and the peace fingers over the eyes, closing off the sight. You'll inhale and exhale through the nose. And as you exhale, you create a humming sound at the back of the throat. It'll sound like a bumblebee and it'll create vibrations in the body. So you'll do it on a rolling basis. You can do however many rounds you want. You won't wait for me. You'll just inhale, and as you exhale, you create the hum. When you finish that long exhale, you'll inhale again and just start over. So inhaling. Wherever you are, if you're already in the meditation, we'll meet you there. I'm going to set the timer. You'll join us when you're ready. Bringing hands to heart center. Namaste. Have a beautiful day, everybody. See you tomorrow.